I'm Jessica, 29, and I never thought a Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house would be the moment everything shattered. I'd driven 3 hours from Denver back to their cramped ranch in the suburbs, bringing a homemade pumpkin cheesecake and a bottle of expensive wine, hoping for once we could have a normal family holiday. But the second I walked through the door, I knew something was off. My sister Jennifer was there with her husband Derek and their 7-year-old daughter Olivia, all sprawled across the living room like they owned the place. My mom Linda barely looked up from the turkey, and my dad Richard was in his recliner, remote in hand, eyes glued to the football game. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I set the cheesecake on the kitchen counter, and that's when my dad finally acknowledged me. He didn't get up, didn't even turn his head fully. He just muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice thick with that tone he always used when he wanted to cut me down. Share or leave, Jess. Your sister needs that apartment more than you need it sitting empty half the time. The room went dead silent. Then Jennifer laughed, this high-pitched cackle that made my stomach turn. Derek smirked into his beer, and my mom just kept basting the turkey like nothing had happened. Even little Olivia looked confused, her crayon hovering over her coloring book. I stood there holding a dish towel I'd grabbed without thinking, my face burning, my chest tight. They were talking about my apartment. My 2-bedroom loft in Denver's Lodo district that I'd saved for 3 years to buy. The place I'd renovated myself, the one I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford. And they wanted me to just hand over a key to Jennifer like it was theirs to decide. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just set the towel down, grabbed my coat, and walked out into the cold November air, leaving the cheesecake and the wine behind. Their voices faded as I got into my car, but the anger didn't. It burned hotter with every mile I drove back to Denver. What could I possibly do to make them see I wasn't their backup plan, their fallback option, their charity case? I've always been the one who made it on my own. I'm a marketing consultant in Denver, running my own agency out of a small office downtown. It's not a Fortune 500 company, but it's mine and it pays well. Really well. I've built a client list that includes local startups, a few national brands, and even a tech company that flew me to San Francisco twice last year for strategy sessions. My loft in Lodo is a sleek 2-bedroom with exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and a balcony where I drink my coffee every morning. I bought it 4 years ago for $320,000, pouring my savings and every freelance check into the down payment. It's worth $400,000 now, and renting it at market rate would bring in $3,000 a month easy. But I'm not renting it to strangers. I'm letting my parents stay there. My dad Richard, my mom Linda, my sister Jennifer, her husband Derek, and their daughter Olivia, all crammed into my loft for just $700 a month. I thought I was helping them out, keeping the family together, giving them a break while they got back on their feet. Turns out I was setting myself up to be walked all over. My family has always had this way of making me feel like I'm not enough. Growing up, Jennifer was the star. She was the cheerleader, the honor roll student, the one who got the lead in every school play. I was the quiet kid who spent weekends teaching myself Photoshop and building websites for my friends' garage bands. My parents loved to compare us. Why can't you be more like your sister? Why don't you join something? Why are you always in your room? Even now, with my business thriving and a loft in my name, they still treat me like I'm the screw-up who needs their advice. Jennifer works part-time at a boutique in a strip mall, barely pulling in $1,500 a month. Derek drives for a food delivery app, constantly griping about gas prices and tips. They've been living in my loft with my parents for over a year now, ever since my parents sold their house and decided to downsize. My dad retired early from his job as a warehouse supervisor, and my mom never worked outside the home. They don't have much saved, maybe $30,000 between them, and they're living off Social Security and the occasional odd job my dad picks up. I figured charging them $700 a month was generous, a way to help without enabling them completely. My accountant told me I was losing nearly $2,000 a month in potential income, but I didn't care. They're family, right? 2 months ago, I went all out for my dad's birthday. I designed a custom marketing package for his buddy's struggling landscaping business, completely free, worth at least $5,000 in billable hours. I spent nights and weekends building a website, creating social media content, even designing business cards and flyers. I presented it to my dad at his birthday lunch, thinking he'd be proud, maybe even thank me. He glanced at the portfolio I'd printed, flipped through it for maybe 10 seconds, and said, "That's nice, Jess, but Tom's not really a computer guy." My mom nodded along, saying something about how people his age don't trust the internet. Jennifer didn't even look up from her phone. Derek made some comment about how marketing is all smoke and mirrors anyway. The only person who seemed excited was Olivia, who hugged me and said the colors on the website were pretty. That moment with her was the only thing that kept me from losing it right there in that restaurant. But it wasn't just the gift. It's the way they've always treated me, like everything I do is nice but not really important. Like my career is a cute little hobby compared to Jennifer's part-time retail gig. My mom is always going on about how hard Jennifer works, how she's such a devoted mom, how she's doing her best. Meanwhile, I'm pulling 12-hour days to close deals and keep clients happy, and they act like I'm coasting through life on some trust fund I don't have. I started wondering if they even respected me at all, or if I was just the family ATM they could tap whenever they needed something. It's not like I haven't tried to set boundaries. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, I brought up the rent with Jennifer over coffee. I didn't want to blindside her, so I mentioned casually that the loft's value had gone up, that market rates were climbing. She laughed it off, said I was lucky to have family willing to live in my fancy place and keep it from sitting empty. Keep it from sitting empty. Like I needed them there. Like I wasn't the one doing them a favor. Derek overheard and made this snide remark about how I'd never survive without their help keeping the place occupied. Their help? I'm the one paying the mortgage, the HOA fees, the property taxes. I let it go. Told myself it wasn't worth the fight, but inside I was seething. I started paying closer attention after that. Little things I'd ignored before suddenly stood out. Jennifer would post photos on Facebook, showing off the loft like it was hers. She'd tag home decor brands, post about her morning coffee on my balcony, caption things like living my best life in the heart of Denver. She never mentioned it was my place, never credited me. My dad started calling every few weeks asking for a little extra cash for repairs or groceries, but when I'd check in, there was never anything actually broken. They just wanted money. My mom never backed me up, always siding with Jennifer, always making excuses for why they needed more time, more help, more grace. It felt like they thought I owed them the loft, like I was supposed to keep handing over my money and my space because we share DNA. I confided in my boyfriend Ryan about it one night. He's 32, a software engineer who works remotely for a company in Austin. We've been together for 3 years, and he's seen firsthand how my family treats me. He didn't sugarcoat it. "Jess," he said, "they're using you. You're not their daughter or their sister right now. You're their meal ticket." His words stung, but they also rang true. I'd been telling myself I was being supportive, that I was the bigger person, but really I was just letting them take advantage of me. That realization hurt, but it also sparked something. I wasn't sure what I'd do yet, but I knew I couldn't keep playing this game. Every time I drove past the loft, I felt this knot in my stomach. It wasn't just about the money, though losing $2,000 a month was no joke. It was about respect. I'd worked my tail off for everything I had, and they acted like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I started thinking about what it would be like to take it all back, to show them I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. At Thanksgiving dinner, with my dad's casual demand to share or leave, was the final straw, but I wasn't ready to act yet. I needed to know for sure that I wasn't overreacting, that this wasn't just me being sensitive. A week after Thanksgiving, I got a text from Courtney, a mutual friend who works with Jennifer at the boutique. We'd been friendly in high school, but hadn't talked much since. Her message was short and to the point. "Jess, you need to see this." She'd attached a screenshot of a group chat Jennifer had with a few of her friends. The message was from Jennifer, sent 3 days earlier. "You guys, I'm totally playing my sister. We're living in her bougie loft in Lodo for $700 a month. It's worth like $3 grand easy. She's too much of a doormat to charge us what it's actually worth. Honestly, we've got her wrapped around our finger. I stared at that screenshot for a full minute, my hands shaking. Doormat. Wrapped around our finger. My own sister, the person I'd spent my whole life trying to impress, trying to help, was laughing at me behind my back. Courtney added another text. I'm really sorry, Jess. I thought you should know. She said Jennifer had been bragging about it for weeks, how they had this sweet setup, and I was too naive to do anything about it. I thanked Courtney, my voice steady even though I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night, I sat on my couch in my own apartment, the one I actually lived in, a smaller one-bedroom I'd kept after buying the loft as an investment. I read Jennifer's message over and over, each word cutting deeper. Doormat. Boo. Wrapped around our finger. My dad's lectures about being grateful, my mom's silence, Derek's smug comments, they all made sense now. They weren't struggling family members trying to get by. They were con artists, and I'd been their mark. I pulled up the loft's financials, spreadsheets I'd been avoiding because I didn't want to face the numbers. Market rent was $3,200 a month. I'd been charging $700. Over the past year, I'd lost $30,000 in potential income, not counting the taxes and fees I'd covered. $30,000 because I thought I was doing the right thing. Jennifer's words echoed in my head. We've got her wrapped around our finger. Not anymore. I decided right then that they'd pay market rate or they'd get out. No more favors, no more family discounts, no more being the doormat. I spent the next 2 days planning. I reviewed the lease agreement I'd had them sign when they moved in. It was month to month, which meant I could raise the rent with 30 days' notice. I documented everything, save Courtney's screenshot, pulled up Jennifer's Facebook posts showing off my loft. I wasn't going into this blind. On a cold Saturday morning, I drove to the loft and called a family meeting. I didn't give them advance notice, just showed up and told them we needed to talk. Jennifer and Derek were on the couch, my dad was in the armchair, and my mom was in the kitchen. Olivia was at a friend's house, which was probably for the best. I stood in the middle of the living room, my living room, and didn't waste time with pleasantries. The rent's going up, I said, keeping my voice calm and firm. Starting next month, it's $3,200. That's the market rate. Pay it or you have 30 days to find a new place. The room exploded. Jennifer's face went white, then red. She stood up, her voice shrill. Are you kidding me right now? We can't afford that, Jess. You know we can't. Derek leaned forward, his jaw tight, his eyes narrowed. This is how you treat family? Seriously? My dad's face turned purple, his voice booming. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you. My mom just stood there in the kitchen doorway, her hands wringing a dish towel, not saying a word. I didn't flinch. I've been subsidizing your life for over a year, I said. I'm done. You want to live in my loft? Pay what it's worth. Jennifer's voice went higher, almost panicked. We're your family, Jess. You can't just kick us out. I crossed my arms. I'm not kicking you out. I'm charging you what anyone else would pay. If you can't afford it, that's not my problem. Derek muttered something under his breath, but I didn't catch it. My dad stood up, pointing a finger at me. You're making a huge mistake. You're tearing this family apart over money. I met his gaze, my heart pounding but my resolve solid. No, Dad. You tore this family apart when you decided I owed you my apartment. 30 days. Pay or leave. I walked out before they could say anything else, my hands shaking as I got into my car. I knew the fallout was coming, but I didn't care. I'd drawn the line, and I wasn't backing down. The messages started flooding in before I even made it home. My phone buzzed nonstop on the drive back to my apartment, lighting up with texts and missed calls. I waited until I was safely parked in my building's garage before I looked. Jennifer had sent a string of messages, each one more desperate than the last. You can't do this to us. Where are we supposed to go? You're being completely unreasonable. Think about Olivia. Do you want your niece on the street? That last one made my jaw clench. Using Olivia as a guilt trip was low, even for Jennifer. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that I hadn't already made clear. Derek had texted too, his messages shorter and angrier. This is messed up. You're going to regret this. Real classy, Jess. I deleted them without replying. My mom sent one text, simple and cutting. "You're breaking your father's heart." I stared at that one longer than I should have, feeling a pang of something guilt, sadness, I wasn't sure. But then I remembered Jennifer's screenshot, the words doormat and wrapped around our finger, and the pang disappeared. My dad called twice, leaving voicemails I didn't listen to. I could imagine what he was saying, the same lectures about family loyalty and gratitude he'd been giving me my whole life. I wasn't interested. That night, Ryan came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. He found me sitting on my couch, staring at my phone, still processing everything. "You okay?" he asked, setting the food on my coffee table. I told him about the meeting, about their reactions, about the flood of messages. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me into a hug. "You did the right thing," he said. "They're panicking because they know they've been caught." His support meant everything. I'd been second-guessing myself all evening, wondering if I'd been too harsh, if there was a way to handle it that wouldn't blow up the family. But Ryan reminded me of the facts. They'd been taking advantage of me for over a year. They'd mocked me behind my back. They'd treated my generosity like it was something they were entitled to. I hadn't done anything wrong. We spent the evening going through my documentation. Ryan helped me organize everything into a folder on my laptop. Courtney's screenshot of Jennifer's group chat, the Facebook posts where Jennifer showed off the loft without crediting me, records of the below-market rent payments, the lease agreement that clearly stated I could adjust terms with 30 days' notice. "If they want to fight this, you're covered," Ryan said. "But I don't think they will. They don't have a leg to stand on." I hoped he was right, but something told me this wasn't over. The next morning, I woke up to a notification that made my stomach drop. Jennifer had posted on Facebook, and it was already gaining traction. The post was a photo of the loft's living room, the one with the big windows and the view of downtown Denver. The caption read, "My sister decided money is more important than family. She's kicking us out of our home because she wants to charge us rent we can't afford. Guess blood doesn't mean much when there's profit involved. Heartbroken doesn't even cover it." The post had been up for 3 hours and already had 50 likes and a dozen comments. I scrolled through them, my chest tightening with every word. That's so cold. Family should come first. What kind of person does that? Some people are just greedy. I wanted to scream. Jennifer had twisted the entire story, made it sound like I was evicting them out of nowhere for no reason. She didn't mention that I'd been letting them live there for a fraction of the cost. She didn't mention the year of below-market rent, the thousands of dollars I'd lost, the fact that they'd been laughing at me in group chats. She just painted me as the villain, and people were eating it up. I took screenshots of the post and every comment, saving them in my evidence folder. I wasn't going to engage. Arguing on Facebook would only make things worse, give Jennifer more ammunition to twist the narrative. But I wasn't going to let it slide either. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Nice move, Jess. But if you think this is over, you're wrong. Push us any further and you'll regret it." My pulse spiked. The message was vague enough to have plausible deniability, but the threat was clear. I immediately thought of Derek. His temper had always been unpredictable, and he'd been the angriest during our meeting. I saved the screenshot and forwarded it to Ryan. He called me within minutes. "That's a threat," he said, his voice tight. "You need to take this seriously." We talked for a while, and he convinced me to keep records of everything. Every text, every call, every post. If things escalated, I'd need proof. The next few days were tense. I stayed away from the loft, not wanting another confrontation. But on Wednesday, I got a call from the building's property manager, a guy named Tom who'd always been friendly. "Hey Jess," he said, sounding uncomfortable. "I just wanted to give you a heads up. Your dad came by this morning asking about the lease. He was pretty upset, said you were trying to kick them out illegally." I told him everything was above board, but he didn't seem happy. My stomach sank. Of course my dad would try to go around me, try to find some loophole or angle to make me the bad guy. I thanked Tom and asked him to let me know if anyone from my family contacted him again. He agreed, though I could tell he wanted to stay out of it. That Friday, exactly 1 week after I'd given them the ultimatum, I decided to check on the loft. I told myself it was just a routine inspection, making sure everything was in order. But really, I wanted to see if they were taking care of the place or if they were trashing it out of spite. I drove over in the late morning, figuring most of them would be out. My dad usually went to the gym around that time, my mom liked to run errands, and Jennifer's boutique shift started at 11. Derek's schedule was unpredictable, but I was willing to risk it. I used my key to let myself in, calling out a quick hello as I stepped inside. The loft was quiet, the air stale like no one had opened a window in days. I walked through the living room, my eyes scanning for anything out of place. At first, everything seemed fine. The furniture was where it should be, no obvious messes. But then I noticed something on the wall near the kitchen. A long, jagged scratch, deep enough to gouge the drywall, running from about waist height down to the baseboard. My heart sank. That wall had been pristine when they moved in. I'd painted it myself, a soft gray that complemented the exposed brick. I pulled out my phone and took photos from multiple angles, zooming in on the damage. It wasn't an accident. The scratch was too deliberate, too clean. Someone had taken something sharp, maybe a key or a knife, and dragged it down the wall. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. I moved through the rest of the loft, checking every room. In the second bedroom, the one Jennifer and Derek used, I found more damage. A cigarette burn on the hardwood floor near the window, small but unmistakable. Neither of them smoked, or at least they hadn't when they moved in. I took more photos. The bathroom was worse. The mirror above the sink had a cracked spider webbing from the corner, like someone had hit it with something hard. The shower curtain was ripped, hanging by 2 hooks instead of 12. I documented everything, my hands shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. This wasn't wear and tear. This was sabotage. They were destroying my property because they were angry I'd stood up to them. I finished my inspection and locked up, my mind racing. I needed to act fast. If they were willing to do this much damage in a week, what would they do in the remaining 3 weeks before the deadline? I called my lawyer that afternoon. His name was Andrew, a guy I'd worked with when I bought the loft. I'd kept his number just in case, never thinking I'd actually need it for something like this. I laid out everything for him. The below-market rent, Jennifer's group chat messages, the Facebook post, the threatening text, and now the property damage. He listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. "This is pretty clear-cut," he said. "The lease allows you to raise the rent with proper notice, which you gave. The damage is documented, and the texts could be considered harassment. If they don't comply, you can move forward with eviction proceedings." He warned me that family disputes could get messy, especially with social media involved, but he was confident I had a solid case. Andrew started drafting a formal notice, a legal document that would outline the rent increase and the consequences of non-payment. It was basically a final warning, a last chance for them to either pay up or get out without a legal battle. He said he'd have it ready by Monday, and that I should serve it in person or via certified mail, to make sure there was a paper trail. I agreed, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I had a professional backing me up, dread at how far this had gone. That weekend, I tried to distract myself. Ryan and I went hiking in the Rockies, spent Saturday night at a brewery in Boulder, did everything we could to keep my mind off the situation. But it was always there, lurking in the back of my thoughts. Sunday evening, I got another text from my mom. "Your father wants to talk. Please call him." I stared at the message for a long time before deciding to respond. "I'm not discussing this over the phone. He knows my terms." She didn't reply. Monday morning, Andrew emailed me the formal notice. It was 3 pages long, written in dense legal language that basically said what I'd already told them. Pay $3,200 a month starting December 1st or vacate the premises by December 31st. Failure to comply would result in eviction proceedings. I printed 2 copies, one for my records and one to deliver. Andrew had suggested certified mail, but I decided to do it in person. I wanted them to see my face, to know I wasn't backing down. I drove to the loft that afternoon, my stomach in knots. I knocked on the door, and Jennifer answered. Her face hardened the second she saw me. "What do you want?" she snapped. I handed her the envelope. "This is a formal notice," I said calmly. It outlines the rent increase and the deadline. You have until the end of the month to decide. She snatched the envelope out of my hand, her eyes blazing. You're really doing this, she said. You're really choosing money over us. I met her gaze. I'm choosing myself, I said. You made your choice when you decided to mock me behind my back. Her mouth opened like she was going to argue, but I turned and walked away before she could say anything. The fallout was immediate. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up again. My dad called, yelling so loud I could hear him through the phone without putting it to my ear. Jennifer texted a wall of accusations. Derek sent another vague threat. My mom sent nothing, which somehow felt worse. I turned my phone on silent and spent the evening with Ryan, trying to pretend everything was normal. But I knew it wasn't. I knew the next 3 weeks were going to be hell. Over the next few days, the Facebook posts escalated. Jennifer shared a photo of the formal notice, captioned, "This is what greed looks like. My own sister is using legal threats to force us out. She's not even giving us a chance." The post went viral in our extended family circle. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were commenting, some taking my side, most siding with Jennifer. One cousin, a guy named Matt who'd always been close to my dad, sent me a direct message. "You should be ashamed of yourself. Family is supposed to help each other, not tear each other down." I didn't respond. There was no point. The damage to the loft continued. I went back the following week and found new scratches on the kitchen cabinets, a dent in the fridge door, and a stain on the carpet in the living room that looked suspiciously like red wine. I documented everything, sent the photos to Andrew, and tried to keep my anger in check. They were doing this on purpose, trying to bait me into a reaction, maybe hoping I'd do something rash they could use against me. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. By mid-December, the tension was unbearable. I hadn't spoken to my parents in weeks. Jennifer's Facebook campaign had painted me as a monster, and half my extended family wasn't speaking to me. But I had Ryan, I had Courtney who'd checked in a few times to make sure I was okay, and I had Andrew who kept reassuring me I was doing the right thing. The deadline was 2 weeks away, and I had no idea if they were planning to pay or leave. Andrew advised me to prepare for the worst, to assume they'd refuse and start the eviction process. I hated that it had come to this, but I wasn't backing down. One night, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, when my phone buzzed with a new email. It was from Jennifer, sent at 2 in the morning. The subject line was, "You win." I opened it, my heart pounding. The email was short. "We can't afford the rent. We're moving out. Happy now?" There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just bitterness and blame. I read it 3 times, waiting for relief to wash over me. But all I felt was exhaustion. I forwarded the email to Andrew and Ryan, then turned off my phone and tried to sleep. The next morning, I called Andrew. He reviewed the email and said it was enough to consider the matter settled, as long as they actually moved out by the deadline. "If they don't, we file for eviction," he said. "But it sounds like they're folding." I asked about the property damage, whether I could pursue compensation. He said I could, but it would mean dragging this out even longer, possibly taking them to small claims court. I wasn't sure it was worth it. I just wanted them gone. The days leading up to their move were agonizing. I stayed away from the loft, not wanting another confrontation. Ryan offered to check on the place for me, but I told him I'd handle it once they were out. I spent the time trying to refocus on my work, on my clients, on anything that didn't involve my family. But it was hard. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for another attack, another guilt trip, another threat. Most of the time it was nothing. But the anxiety lingered. On December 28th, 3 days before the deadline, I got a text from my mom. "We're out. The loft is yours." I stared at the message, unsure how to feel. There was no warmth in it, no hint of reconciliation. Just a cold statement of fact. I replied with a simple, "Thank you," and left it at that. The next morning, I drove to the loft, my stomach churning with nerves. I wasn't sure what I'd find. Part of me expected the place to be trashed, completely destroyed out of spite. Another part hoped they'd left it in decent shape, that maybe there was still a shred of decency in them. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The loft was empty. All their belongings were gone, The furniture I'd provided still in place but looking worn and neglected. I walked through slowly, taking it all in. The living room had the stained carpet and scratched wall I'd already documented. The kitchen had the damaged cabinets and dented fridge. The second bedroom had the cigarette burn on the floor. The bathroom had the cracked mirror and torn shower curtain. But there was something new. In the hallway near the front door, they'd left a message. It was written in black marker on the wall, big enough to read from across the room. Hope it was worth it. I stood there staring at those 4 words, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. They still didn't get it. They still thought I was the villain, that I'd done something wrong by standing up for myself. I pulled out my phone and took photos, adding them to the growing evidence folder. Then I called a cleaning service and a handyman, scheduling them to come out the next day. The marker would need to be painted over, the carpet replaced, the mirror fixed. It was going to cost me at least $2,000, maybe more. But it was worth it. The loft was mine again. I spent the rest of the day going through every room, checking for anything they might have left behind. In Olivia's room, I found a small stuffed bunny tucked under the bed. My heart ached. She was just a kid, caught in the middle of her parents' mess. I picked up the bunny and set it on the dresser, making a mental note to find a way to get it back to her. In the closet, I found a note, folded and tucked into the corner. It was in Olivia's handwriting, wobbly letters on lined paper. "I'm sorry, Aunt Jess. I love you." I sat on the floor and cried, the weight of everything finally hitting me. The cleaning crew arrived at 8 in the morning, 3 people with equipment and supplies ready to tackle the mess my family had left behind. I met them at the loft, coffee in hand, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. The team leader, a woman named Gloria who'd done work for me before, took one look at the place and whistled low. "What happened here?" she asked, her eyes landing on the marker message in the hallway. "Family dispute," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She nodded like she'd seen it all before and got her team started. I stayed for the first hour, watching them work, pointing out the stains and scratches I wanted addressed. The carpet in the living room would need professional treatment, possibly replacement if the wine stain wouldn't come out. The marker on the hallway wall would require primer and 2 coats of paint. The cigarette burn in the bedroom floor couldn't be fixed without replacing the boards, which would be expensive and time-consuming. Gloria suggested covering it with a rug for now, and I agreed. The cracked bathroom mirror would need to be replaced entirely, and the shower curtain was an easy fix. She estimated the work would take 3 days, maybe 4, and quoted me $2,200. I agreed without hesitation. It was worth every penny to erase the evidence of their spite. While the crew worked, I drove to a home improvement store and bought paint, new cabinet hardware for the kitchen, and a few decorative touches to make the loft feel fresh. I wasn't just cleaning up after my family. I was reclaiming the space, making it mine again. At the store, I ran into an old colleague from my early freelance days, a guy named Paul who now worked in real estate. We chatted for a few minutes, and when I mentioned I was getting the loft ready to rent, his eyes lit up. "Market's hot right now," he said. "You'll have no problem finding tenants at a good rate." He gave me his card and told me to call if I needed help. I tucked it into my pocket, filing the idea away for later. Back at the loft, the cleaning crew was making progress. The carpet treatment had worked better than expected, the stain fading to a barely noticeable shadow. The hallway wall was primed and drying, ready for paint. I spent the afternoon painting it myself, rolling the soft gray over the marker message until it disappeared completely. Each stroke felt like closure, like I was erasing not just the words but the anger and hurt behind them. By the time I finished, the wall looked perfect, like nothing had ever been there. I stood back and admired my work, feeling a small spark of satisfaction. That evening, Ryan came by with dinner, Chinese takeout from our favorite place in Capitol Hill. We sat on the floor of the empty living room, eating straight from the containers, talking about what came next. "You should rent it out," he said. "Get some good tenants in here, people who'll actually appreciate the place." I nodded, already thinking the same thing. I called Paul the next morning, and he came by that afternoon to look at the loft. He walked through every room, taking notes, asking questions about the lease terms I had in mind. "This place is a gold mine," he said. 2 bedrooms in Lodo, updated finishes, great views. You could easily get $3,200 a month, maybe more if you're willing to wait for the right tenant. We spent an hour going over the details. Paul suggested listing it on a few rental sites he had access to, targeting young professionals, couples, maybe even small families. He said he'd handle the vetting process, check references, run background checks, make sure I got reliable tenants. I agreed to everything, eager to move forward. By the end of the week, the loft was spotless. The cleaning crew had finished, the repairs were done, and I'd added a few new touches. Fresh throw pillows on the couch, a new area rug in the living room to cover the cigarette burn, updated hardware on the kitchen cabinets. The place looked better than it had when my family moved in, and I felt a surge of pride. Paul listed the loft the following Monday, and the response was immediate. Within 2 days, he had a dozen inquiries. We scheduled showings for that weekend, and I met Paul at the loft to help. The first couple who came through were in their late 20s, both working in tech, polite and enthusiastic. They loved the location, the natural light, the exposed brick. The second showing was a single woman, a doctor doing her residency at a hospital downtown. She was quiet but thorough, asking detailed questions about the lease terms, the building amenities, the neighborhood. The third showing was a young family, a couple with a toddler, but they decided the space was too small. By Sunday evening, Paul had received applications from both the tech couple and the doctor. We reviewed them together over coffee at a shop near my apartment. Both had solid references, clean background checks, and incomes well above the rent threshold. The tech couple seemed nice, but the doctor stood out. Her application was impeccable, her references glowing, and she'd offered to sign a 2-year lease instead of the standard 1 year. She wants stability, Paul said. She's not going to flake on you. I made my decision. The doctor it was. We finalized the paperwork that week. Her name was Dr. Allison Carter, and she was set to move in on January 15th. She signed the lease without hesitation, paid the first and last month's rent plus a security deposit, and even sent me a thank you email. I'm so excited to call this place home, she wrote. Thank you for this opportunity. Reading that email, I felt something shift. For over a year, the loft had been a source of stress, a constant reminder of my family's entitlement and disrespect. Now it was becoming something positive again, a space where someone who actually valued it would live. The financial side was a relief too. $3,200 a month compared to the $700 my family had been paying. Over the course of a year, that was an additional $30,000 in income. $30,000 I could invest, save, or use to grow my business. I met with my accountant the following week to go over the numbers, and he was thrilled. This is what you should have been doing from the start, he said. You're finally treating this like the asset it is. I couldn't argue with that. As January rolled in, I started to feel like I could breathe again. The loft was rented to a responsible tenant, the damage was repaired, and my family was out of my life. Or so I thought. On January 10th, 5 days before Dr. Carter was set to move in, I got a voicemail from my mom. I almost deleted it without listening, but something made me press play. Jessica, it's your mother, she said, her voice tight. Your father is in the hospital. He had a heart attack. We're at Denver General. I thought you should know. The message ended, and I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to write it off as another guilt trip, another attempt to manipulate me into feeling bad. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being a kid, that still had some thread of connection to the man who'd raised me, couldn't let it go. I called Ryan, told him what happened, and he offered to come with me to the hospital. I accepted, grateful for his support. We drove to Denver General in silence, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't quite organize. I wasn't sure what I'd find when I got there, or what I'd say if I saw my family. The hospital was cold and sterile, the fluorescent lights harsh against the white walls. I checked in at the front desk, and a nurse directed me to the cardiac unit on the 3rd floor. Ryan and I took the elevator up, my stomach churning with every floor we passed. When we reached the waiting area, I saw my mom sitting in a chair, her face pale and drawn. Jennifer was next to her, arms crossed, her expression hard. Derek was nowhere to be seen. My mom looked up when she saw me, her eyes filling with tears. Jessica, she said, standing. I wasn't sure you'd come. I walked over, Ryan staying a few steps behind. "How is he?" I asked. My mom wiped her eyes. "He's stable now," she said. "They did an angioplasty, put in a stent. The doctor says he'll be okay, but he needs to take it easy." I nodded, unsure what to say. Jennifer stood up, her face twisting with anger. "This is your fault," she hissed. The stress of losing the apartment, the fighting, it pushed him over the edge. I felt Ryan tense beside me, but I stayed calm. "Dad's health issues aren't my responsibility," I said quietly. "He made his choices just like I made mine." Jennifer's face reddened, but my mom put a hand on her arm, stopping her from saying more. I asked if I could see him, and my mom led me down the hall to his room. He was lying in a hospital bed, wires and monitors attached to his chest, and 4 in his arm. He looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. His eyes were closed, but they opened when we walked in. "Jessica," he said, his voice hoarse. I stepped closer, unsure what to feel. "Hey Dad," I said. "How are you doing?" He gave a weak smile. "Been better," he said. Then his expression shifted, a flicker of the old anger crossing his face. "I suppose you're happy now," he said. "You got what you wanted." I felt a knot tighten in my chest, but I didn't rise to the bait. "I'm not happy you're in the hospital," I said. "But I'm not sorry for standing up for myself." We stayed for a few more minutes, the conversation stilted and uncomfortable. My mom hovered by the door, Jennifer glaring from the hallway. When it was clear there was nothing more to say, I told them I'd check in later and left with Ryan. In the car, I broke down, the weight of everything finally crashing over me. Ryan held my hand, letting me cry without trying to fix it. "You did the right thing going there," he said. "But you don't owe them anything more than that." I knew he was right, but it didn't make it easier. Over the next few days, I kept tabs on my dad's condition through occasional texts with my mom. He was recovering, scheduled to be discharged by the end of the week. I didn't visit again, didn't call. I'd shown up when it mattered, and that was enough. On January 15th, Dr. Carter moved into the loft. I met her there to hand over the keys, and she was as professional and kind as her application had suggested. "Thank you again," she said, shaking my hand. "This place is perfect." I smiled, feeling a genuine sense of relief. "Take care of it," I said. She promised she would. Walking out of that building, knowing the loft was in good hands, I felt lighter than I had in months. The chapter with my family was closed, messy and painful, but closed. I drove home to my own apartment, where Ryan was waiting with dinner and a bottle of wine. We toasted to new beginnings, to boundaries, to choosing myself. The loft was mine again, not in the sense that I lived there, but in the sense that I controlled it. I'd reclaimed what was mine, and I wasn't looking back. The months following my dad's hospital scare were strange and quiet. I kept minimal contact with my family, mostly through brief texts with my mom about his recovery. He'd been prescribed medication, told to change his diet and reduce stress, and from what I gathered, he was following orders. Jennifer stopped posting about me on Facebook, though whether that was because she'd moved on or because she realized it wasn't helping her case, I couldn't say. Derek had apparently found more consistent work at a warehouse, and they'd moved into a small rental house on the outskirts of Aurora, sharing the space with my parents. It wasn't the cramped situation I'd imagined, but it wasn't the spacious loft in Lodo either. Dr. Carter turned out to be exactly the kind of tenant I'd hoped for. She paid her rent on the first of every month without fail, kept the place immaculate, and reached out only when necessary. In February, she emailed me about a minor plumbing issue, which I had fixed within 24 hours. She sent a thank you note afterward, something I'd never received from my family in the entire year they'd lived there. The contrast was stark and validating. This was what a normal landlord-tenant relationship looked like, built on mutual respect and clear expectations. My business was thriving too. The stress of dealing with my family had taken a toll on my work for months, but once that weight was lifted, I found myself more creative and productive than I'd been in years. I landed 2 major clients in January, a tech startup that needed a complete rebrand and a local restaurant chain looking to expand their digital presence. Both projects were challenging and lucrative, pushing my income higher than it had ever been. Ryan joked that cutting off my family was the best business decision I'd ever made, and while I laughed, there was truth in it. I wasn't carrying their burden anymore, and it showed in every aspect of my life. The tech startup project was particularly exciting because they gave me complete creative freedom. They were 3 recent graduates from University of Colorado who developed an app for meal planning and grocery delivery, and they needed everything from logo design to social media strategy. I threw myself into the work, creating a brand identity that was fresh and modern while still feeling approachable. The restaurant chain project was different, but equally rewarding. They wanted to appeal to a younger demographic without alienating their existing customer base, which required a delicate balance. I developed a campaign that highlighted their farm-to-table ingredients and local partnerships, and within 2 months of launch, they'd seen a 20% increase in customers under 35. In March, Ryan and I started talking seriously about our future. We'd been together for 3 years, living separately but spending most nights at one or the other's apartment. One evening over dinner at a steakhouse downtown, he brought up the idea of moving in together. "I've been thinking," he said, twirling his wine glass. "What if we got a place together? Something that's ours, not just yours or mine." The idea excited me more than I expected. I'd been so focused on reclaiming my independence, on proving I didn't need anyone, that I hadn't considered what it would mean to build something with someone who actually valued me. We spent the next few weeks looking at apartments, narrowing our search to neighborhoods we both loved. We wanted something close to downtown but with a bit more space than either of our current places offered. By mid-April, we found it, a 3-bedroom townhouse in the Highlands with a small backyard and a garage. It was more than either of us could afford alone, but together it was perfect. We signed the lease in May and moved in over Memorial Day weekend, combining our furniture and belongings into a space that felt genuinely like home. The process of merging our lives was surprisingly smooth. Ryan was easygoing about decorating decisions, letting me take the lead on colors and furniture placement since design was literally my profession. We turned one bedroom into a home office for me, another into a guest room, and kept the master for ourselves. The backyard became our weekend retreat, where we'd grill dinner and sit under string lights talking about our days. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was building something stable and healthy, something that wasn't weighed down by obligation or resentment. I decorated the home office with particular care, painting the walls a soft sage green, and installing floating shelves for my design books and supplies. Ryan built me a custom desk using reclaimed wood from a salvage yard, spending an entire weekend sanding and staining it until it was perfect. He presented it to me with such pride, and I was genuinely touched by the effort he'd put into making my workspace special. It was such a stark contrast to how my family had dismissed my custom artwork, how they'd treated my professional accomplishments like hobbies. Ryan celebrated everything I did, and it made me realize just how much I'd been settling for scraps of validation my entire life. Around the same time, Ryan did something I hadn't expected. He proposed. It wasn't elaborate or public, just the 2 of us on our new back patio one Saturday morning, coffee mugs in hand. He got down on one knee, pulled out a simple but beautiful ring, and asked me to marry him. I said yes without hesitation, tears streaming down my face. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was choosing something for me, not because my family expected it or because I was trying to prove something. I was choosing happiness, partnership, a future with someone who saw me for who I really was. We decided on a small wedding, nothing fancy or over the top. We set the date for October, giving us 5 months to plan. I knew immediately that I wouldn't be inviting my parents or Jennifer. The thought crossed my mind briefly, the ingrained guilt that comes with excluding family from major life events. But Ryan reminded me of everything they'd put me through, the betrayal, the manipulation, the property damage. "They don't get to be part of your joy after trying to tear you down," he said. I agreed, and the decision felt right. The guest list was intimate, about 40 people. Ryan's family, who'd always been warm and welcoming to me. My closest friends, including Courtney, who'd been the one to show me Jennifer's damning group chat. A handful of colleagues and clients who'd become more like friends over the years. No extended family from my side, no cousins or aunts or uncles who might report back to my parents. It was liberating, choosing who I wanted to celebrate with rather than who I felt obligated to include. Planning the wedding was joyful in a way I hadn't anticipated. Ryan and I made every decision together, from the venue to the flowers to the music. We chose a small event space in the foothills outside Denver, a rustic barn with views of the mountains. The ceremony would be outdoors if the weather held, with a reception inside. We hired a local caterer, a photographer Ryan knew from college, and a DJ who specialized in intimate gatherings. Everything felt personal and intentional, a reflection of who we were as a couple. We spent evenings after work sampling cakes from different bakeries, finally settling on a local place that made this incredible lemon-raspberry combination. We chose wildflowers for the centerpieces, simple and unpretentious, exactly our style. Ryan picked out his suit, a charcoal gray that complemented my ivory dress perfectly. His groomsmen were his brother and two college friends, guys I'd gotten to know well over the years and genuinely liked. My bridesmaids were Courtney and two friends from my early freelance days. Women who'd seen me struggle and succeed and never once made me feel less than. One of the most meaningful parts of planning was writing our vows. Ryan and I decided to write our own rather than use traditional ones, and I spent weeks crafting mine. I wanted to capture what he meant to me, how he'd shown me what real partnership looked like, how he'd stood by me through the hardest year of my life without once making me feel like I was too much or asking for too much. When I finally finished them, I read them aloud to Courtney over wine one evening, and she cried. "Those are perfect," she said. "He's going to lose it." In late July, I got a text from my mom. It was short and to the point. "Heard you're getting married. Congratulations." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to respond. Part of me wondered if she expected an invitation, if this was her way of fishing for one, but I decided to take it at face value. "Thanks," I replied. That was it. She didn't push, didn't ask for details, and I was grateful for that. The fact that she'd reached out at all surprised me. Maybe somewhere under all the dysfunction, there was still a thread of maternal instinct, however weak. August brought a surprise. I was at my office downtown finishing up a client presentation when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" A small voice came through the line. "Aunt Jess." It was Olivia. My heart clenched. "Hey sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How are you?" She told me she missed me, that she'd found my number written on a scrap of paper in one of her old school notebooks. She asked if we could see each other sometime, maybe get ice cream. I told her I'd love that, but I needed to talk to her parents first. She sounded disappointed but understood. I hung up feeling a mix of emotions, sadness that she was caught in the middle, hope that maybe I could maintain some relationship with her despite everything. I texted Jennifer that evening, keeping it brief. "Olivia called me today. I'd like to see her if that's okay with you." Jennifer's response came an hour later. "Fine. But don't try to turn her against us." I bit back a sarcastic reply and simply said, "I won't." We arranged for me to pick up Olivia the following Saturday for a couple of hours. When the day came, I drove to their rental house in Aurora, a modest single story with a patchy lawn and a rusted chain-link fence. Jennifer met me at the door, her expression guarded. "She's excited to see you," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Olivia came bounding out, throwing her arms around me. I hugged her tight, feeling tears prick my eyes. We went to a nearby ice cream shop, and Olivia chattered the whole way about school, her friends, her new room. She didn't mention the loft or the move, and I didn't bring it up. We sat outside with our cones, and she asked about my life, my work, Ryan. I told her about the wedding, and her eyes lit up. "Can I come?" she asked. I hesitated, unsure how to navigate that minefield. "I'll see what I can do," I said, knowing it was complicated. The truth was, I wanted her there, but I couldn't imagine Jennifer and Derek being okay with it, and I certainly didn't want to invite them just to include Olivia. When I dropped her off, Jennifer was waiting on the porch. "Thanks for taking her," she said stiffly. I nodded and drove away, my heart heavy but also lighter somehow. Olivia reminded me that not everything about my family was broken. She was innocent in all of this. A kid who just wanted to love her aunt without understanding the complicated adult mess surrounding her. Over the next few weeks, I thought about her question constantly. Ryan and I discussed it at length, weighing the pros and cons of having her at the wedding. Finally, We decided to invite her with a carefully worded invitation that went directly to Jennifer and Derek, making it clear Olivia was welcome but they were not. The response came via text from Jennifer. "She can't come without us. It's inappropriate." I expected that answer, but it still stung. I called Olivia a few days later and explained as gently as I could that the wedding was going to be very small and mostly adults, but that we'd celebrate with her another time. She sounded sad but said she understood. I promised to take her out for a special dinner after the honeymoon, just the two of us, and that seemed to cheer her up. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could do given the circumstances. September flew by in a blur of final wedding preparations. We finalized the seating chart, confirmed the vendors, and did a tasting with the caterer. Ryan's parents flew in from Texas a week early to help with last-minute details, and they were everything my parents weren't: supportive, enthusiastic, genuinely happy for us. His mom even helped me pick out my dress, a simple ivory gown with lace sleeves that made me feel beautiful without being over the top. She cried when I tried it on, telling me I looked radiant, and for a moment I felt what it might have been like to have a mother who celebrated me instead of comparing me to my sister. The week before the wedding, I got another text from my mom. "Your father wants to talk to you." I sighed, knowing this was coming. I called him that evening, bracing myself. "Jessica," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry we won't be there." I didn't know how to respond. "You weren't invited," I said finally. "I know," he said. "And I understand why." There was a long pause. "I hope you'll be happy," he added. I thanked him and ended the call, feeling a strange mix of closure and sadness. It wasn't the reconciliation some part of me might have wanted, but it was acknowledgement, and that was something. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies and a gentle breeze. I got ready with my bridesmaids, Courtney and two other close friends, at the venue. Ryan's mom kept popping in with mimosas and compliments, making sure I felt calm and supported. When it was time to walk down the aisle, I did it alone, no father to give me away. It felt right. I was giving myself to this new life, this new chapter, and I didn't need anyone's permission or blessing to do it. The ceremony was everything I'd hoped for. Ryan's vows made me cry, mine made him laugh, and when we kissed, our friends and family erupted in cheers. The reception was a blur of dancing, toasts, and laughter. Courtney gave a speech about how I'd found my strength, and Ryan's best man joked about how I was way out of Ryan's league. We danced until midnight, surrounded by people who loved and respected us, and I felt a joy I hadn't known was possible. As the night wound down, Ryan and I stood on the barn's back porch, looking out at the mountains. "You did it," he said, pulling me close. "You chose yourself, and look where it got you." I leaned into him, feeling the weight of the past year lift completely. I thought about the loft, the confrontation, the damage, the hospital, all of it. And I realized I wouldn't change any of it. Because it had led me here, to this moment, to this life. I was free, truly free, and it felt incredible. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.